Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here, whether in person or online, for this Community Development, Place and Tourism Cabinet Member meeting. The date is Tuesday, the 18th of October 2022, and it is 10 a.m. I always like to do a round of introductions before we start these meetings, so I'll go first. My name is Councillor Matthew Eyre. I'm a councillor for Oakwood Ward and the Cabinet Member for Community Development, Place and Tourism. Charlie, come to you.
Thanks, Chair. Charles Edwards, Head of Community Safety and Integration.
My name is Kyle Hudson. I work in Brentford Derby City Council.
Dominic Monaghan, Democratic Services Officer.
Fabulous, thank you, everybody. So we'll crack on with the agenda. So the first item I've got is apologies, and I'm not aware that we've had any apologies for this meeting. Second item is late items to be introduced by the chair. There are no late items for this meeting. Third item is declarations of interest, and there are no declarations of interest for this meeting. Fourth item is minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of June. We had no issue with the minutes and I'm happy with them, but I'll just check the terminology. Is it that they're agreed, the minutes?
Yeah.
Yep, so we can agree the minutes for the meeting on the 30th of June. Item 5 then is the Safer Derby Community Safety Partnership Plan. And Charlie, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Chair. So I'll just give you a brief overview of the purpose and what recommendation I'm asking for, and then Kyle will give you the reasons, the background information off the strategy and the plan. So reducing disorder, protecting vulnerable people and working proactively to reduce the risk of criminal activity are critical factors in improving the lives of Derby residents. Our Better Together approach, ensuring our work is done with our communities and not to our communities, will work alongside the strategy to complement and connect corporate ambitions. The Community Safety Partnership, which is made up of statutory authorities, ourselves, police, fire, probation and health, remains committed to finding new ways of working effectively and efficiently with partners, residents and businesses to make Derby safer. The document sets out collective determination to tackle the issues that matter most to our residents, those that are causing harm to the most vulnerable. So the officer recommendation today is to approve the content of the strategy, commit our support to its delivery and agree that the Community Safety Partnership, through the Safer Derby Board, oversees the delivery through the Community Safety Thematic Board structure. So I'll just hand over to Kyle.
Yes, so I'm going to do a brief introduction and overview of what the strategy is. So the strategy, the community safety strategy, is a 3-year rolling document that addresses community safety issues and looks at ways that we can enhance community safety. The community safety strategy is based on the Community Safety Partnership, so it has a number of authorities who are party to it. Charlie mentioned some of them in terms of Derbyshire Fire and Rescue, for example, Derbyshire Constabulary. With those different experiences and knowledge, what we hope is that it will become a multi-agency approach and they will inform the action plan and drive the delivery going forward and bring different perspectives and views to the table. The community safety strategy is based on it takes you through different themes that are relevant and pertinent that we need to address. It's based on a strategic intelligence assessment, and the strategic intelligence assessment is evidence-based, whereby we collect data that informs trends and patterns and activity that we need to be doing moving forward. And it's really important that, I guess, it's a really important strategy, as I've said, because we need to enhance community safety and perceptions of community safety as well. But also, it's really important that, I guess, councillors can get involved in it. We know that councillors have a unique mandate and are leaders of communities, and thereby are able to, I guess, reconcile different views. They're able to coordinate different interests. They're also able to, I guess, mobilise communities and engage in dialogue and debate. And as a consequence, they can bring communities with them. They can bring different views and opinions of communities and the residents that they serve, bring their views and ideas to their table. But also, we know that community safety matters to ward members. We know that even maybe in a community or a particular ward where crime levels are low, we know that perceptions of fear of crime might actually be high, and as a consequence, hopefully we can get the councillors buy-in. They can support us, they can help bring the community round the table so they can also have a stake in the development of the community safety strategy or the actions forward and can communicate that with them. So going through the strategy then, the strategy is broken down into themes. I won't go through the thing in comprehensively in total depth. I'll just kind of give a brief overview of what some of those themes are and what we hoped, what we wanted to achieve from it. So the first theme that we've identified is around integration and community cohesion. We know that there are harmonious, cohesive communities that are central to, I guess, community safety and perceptions of community safety, as well as responding effectively and appropriately to crime and community safety issues. But we also know that several people don't want cohesive communities. They want to disrupt that cohesiveness, and whether that be through things like hate crime, or whether that be through extremism, radicalisation, and terrorism, we know that there are issues, and we know that in certain areas there are certain problems with that. So, as Charlie mentioned previously, this relates to our Better Together strategy working with communities. So what we've done is we've separated it into the reason why it matters, and we have identified what we hope we can do better together, and then to say, well, together we will also do this. So it matters, as I said, because cohesiveness is important, but we hope that together what we can achieve is around making sure that first and foremost there are cohesive and harmonious communities, that people are not becoming radicalised, and actually we can stop those extreme views and extreme actions, whether that be that lead people towards terrorism or violent extremism, or whether that be preventing people from actually participating in hate crime. We also want to enhance communities' capability and capacity, so working very strongly with communities and really trying to identify leaders and bringing through new leaders who can bring different views and different opinions, different perspectives. But it's not just about communities. We also need to work with the education sector, and we know that the education sector plays an important role, whether that be through primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, and further in higher education. So together we will target those who seek to radicalise people. We want to safeguard and support those who are at risk of being drawn into terrorism and extremism. We want to ensure that there's effective multi-agency panels in place that can support and help. So things such as a channel panel, some people may know the channel is a support mechanism for people perhaps have been radicalised. But it's also around, well, what can also additional activities that we want to do, community-based activities. So it might be celebratory events or encouraging equality and diversity and participating in those sorts of events that come with perhaps religious ceremonies, for example. So participating in them. So that's just a bit about the integration and community safety. Another element that we've identified is around neighbourhood crime and social behaviour. So antisocial behaviour is behaviour that may cause harassment, alarm and distress. It's not criminal in nature. However, there's a capability and a possibility that it does become criminal. So we need to address it. Also, although it may perhaps it isn't criminal, it's very important that we address it, because the cumulative impact of antisocial behaviour and sort of those, what some may see as minor issues, actually can have a major impact on people's life. It affects their perceptions of safety, their I guess, desire to stay in their home or their neighbourhood. So it can have a huge impact. In addition to that, it matters because everyone has the right to feel safe in their homes, in their area, and I guess get on with their everyday life without fear of harassment, alarm or distress. So together what we want to do is want to improve residents and visitors' confidence to report antisocial behaviour. What that may mean is, moving forward, we start to look at what are the mechanisms for reporting and how can we perhaps improve those mechanisms if there needs to be any improvement. Also, how can we improve understanding and awareness of those reporting mechanisms, people's confidence to report. move forward. We also want to have a robust and citywide, I guess, tasking group that can implement multi-agency and different approaches to actually address antisocial behaviour that are faced by communities. And we know that based on different areas, the type of antisocial behaviour, kind of what it looks like, will look different, and as a consequence, that multi-agency task force will be integral in order for us to appropriately address it in a way that is needs-based rather than just a generic approach. So then, together, what we want to do is essentially, like I've just said, provide that consistent multi-agency approach to tackle antisocial behaviour. We need to also improve activity. It's mainly young people that we've identified through the shooting intelligence assessment, as well as qualitative information that we gather through speaking to residents and so forth. That is actually young people that are participating in these activities. Consequently, we need to create diversion activities for them. But if it's young people participating in activities, what that also means is we need to ensure that young people are involved in the consultation and the decision-making process, so they can actually identify the community safety activities. They can identify the approaches and mechanisms to enhance community safety, so they're involved in that consultation process. So I guess it's relevant to them. In addition to that, we'll continue to use, I guess, the enforcements that we have, so whether that be fines or CPNs, for example. So then moving on to another theme that's been identified, we've got domestic abuse and violence against women and girls. So this is, I guess, it's a really important area of work that we need to do and that we are focusing on. Since 2021, we've had the Domestic Abuse Act, which came into power. And as part of that, the government are committed to not only tackling and addressing domestic abuse and violence, but also raising awareness and educating people around why they shouldn't do it in the first place. So it matters because in the city, it's estimated that there were between 7,800 women and 3,700 men who were victims of domestic abuse here. In addition to that, the number of contacts to children and young people services in the city has increased by 1,856 based on from the previous year. So we are seeing an increase. And also in the year 2020 to 2021, there was 6,666 police domestic abuse calls for service in the city council area, and 5,919 of these were reported as crimes. So yeah, it's increasing, and I think what we're also seeing is that not only is it increasing, we're seeing that as a result of some of our previous work, people are coming forward and reporting it, which is really good. So together, what we hope we can do is ensure that everyone can live safe lives without the threat or experience of domestic abuse and sexual violence. We want to ensure that domestic abuse services continue to improve and work with people who are experiencing problems of domestic abuse. And that means that together, what we want to do is first and foremost, we need to stop it, but also we need to work with services which provide sanctuary schemes and do target hardening, so it becomes, I guess, more difficult for people to also commit domestic abuse and violence against women and girls. But also, we want to improve support for victims. We know that many people who experience domestic abuse have multiple and complex needs, and that's what that have mental health problems, for example. So we need to ensure that we're improving services for them. So again, it's not a generic service that we're providing; it's bespoke, it's tailored and relevant to different people who may experience it. And then, like I said at the start, we want to, I guess, work with the education sector and others to look at how we can raise awareness of domestic abuse and violence against women and girls, in the hope that we actually can prevent it from Moving forward onto the fourth phase run, the theme that we've identified is serious violence and serious youth violence. This emerged, so since I think it was in July 2019, the government introduced legislation that provided a duty on public bodies and relevant services to work together to tackle serious youth violence within their localities. So it's something that's really on the agenda, something that we really do need to tackle. It matters because although crime has fallen over the last 20 years, what we have seen is that some serious violence offences have actually increased. So, for example, knife crime, homicide, gun crime, as an example. And then what we hope that we can achieve together is empower and resource individuals and families and communities to play a role in tackling serious violence that results in communities that can harm communities, and then we can create strength and resilience within those communities. But we also want to make sure that we can make Derby safer, both subjective positions, so people's, like I said at the start, people's perceptions of crime, perceptions of community safety, make sure that people subjectively feel safer, but also objectively, so we want to measure it and make sure that actually is serious youth violence actually on the decline, which we want it to be. So together, what we want to do, what we will do, is take an evidence-based approach to understanding serious violence and continuously learn and improve how we respond. So we've seen a lot of talk over the last few years around the public health approach. So looking at how we can actually implement learning and a public health approach that I guess is comprehensive and addresses all of these problems around serious violence. We want to deliver or continue to deliver, should I say, education-based programs, working with our partners, and what that will enable us to do is to work, I guess, with people who are already involved in criminality. Perhaps then they're not at a very significant level, so in terms of they're not participating in that, for example, in terms of establishing someone, but perhaps they have been found in possession of a bladed article. As a consequence, we might want to do some targeted intervention with those so they don't go down that path. But also, it's about working with perhaps education, about perhaps certain schools and the education sector to raise awareness of the dangers of knife crime. And that will be using, I guess, innovative and new technology. So it could be things around using virtual reality, for example, to actually educate and teach people around the harms and dangers of using serious youth violence. And also, we need to develop a county-wide serious youth violence strategy in partnership with key stakeholders. We know that serious youth violence doesn't just happen in the city or just in one neighbourhood. It's actually spread out through different people have different links. And those links lead on to our fourth theme, or fifth theme, I've lost count now, of organised crime. Organised crime is a priority for us, and it's not just about people having, like I said previously, around serious violence. It might be around, or is around county lines, modern slavery, or other exploitative criminal activity. Now, this matters to us because sometimes what we know is that a person who may be being exploited may not be aware that they're being exploited. We know that sometimes they may have mental health problems, for example, or they may have learning disability, so they may not actually be aware that they are being exploited. Likewise, some people who perhaps are being exploited, they may not understand the consequences of it, of what it's actually going to lead to later down the line. And as a consequence, we need to ensure that we're able to intervene in that process and to safeguard and support those. And what that means ultimately is that we need to take a collaborative approach with several different agencies to ensure that the mechanisms and the arrangements that we have are appropriate and are working. And in addition to that, it matters because we recognise that exploitation, modern slavery, and involvement in organised crime that affects children and young people, but also adults, are very different. What exploitation of a child looks like, or a young person looks different to another one. As a consequence, we need to make sure that our approach to addressing it is appropriate. Like I've keep mentioning throughout the whole of this, is not just a generic approach, it's actually quite targeted and relevant to the group of people that actually we're working with. So what we hope then is that together we can, we want to ensure that those working and caring with children are aware of the signs of exploitation so they can identify them. So part of that will be training them to identify the signs that they are being exploited, just so that being counterlied or modern slavery. And we want to deliver community campaigns to raise awareness of it. So some people might have been exploited but are not being aware that they are being exploited. And as a consequence of that, we need to make sure that we are raising awareness of the fact that this is what exploitation may look like. Are you experiencing any of these things? And if so, how can you report it? How can you come forward? How can you make people aware? And then a central part of that, again, is creating and maintaining partnerships. Partnership working is essential to this. We know that different teams here in the City Council, for example, have different roles and responsibilities, but they may actually be working with the same organisation, for example, or the same service users, for example, as that we're working with as in the community safety team. As a consequence, we need to ensure we've got a collaborative approach and working with them. So together then, what we will do is safeguard and support those at risk of modern slavery, exploitation or organised crime by working with communities and education providers. We want to consistently be at the table around police meetings, for example, or other key meetings whereby we might get intelligence or information that can enable our activities to be evidence-led. And we want to make sure that all agencies and services are working to the legislation appropriately. So we have now the Modern Slavery Act, which came into power in 2015. Make sure that everyone's working to that and understands if someone is being exploited in modern slavery, they know the mechanisms and the routes to actually make a referral. So that's our 5 themes that we've got. At the end of the community safety plan, what we have is just some key legislation. I'm not going to take us through the whole the legislation in too much detail, but it's just some key legislation that shows the importance of the community safety plan. So we have, for example, the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998. That's essentially the mechanism by which says that policing is basically not just the responsibility of the police, it's now the responsibility of several different partners, so the City Council as well as others. We all have a role to play in it. We've outlined the safeguarding legislation, counter-terrorism legislation. So that's just a bit about some legislation, as well as that's a brief overview of what the community safety plan is. It's like.
Fantastic. Fabulous. That was far more informative and elegant than I ever could have imagined. Certainly than I ever could have imagined coming from me. That was fantastic. So thank you so much for that one. You covered all the main points that I had written down before me. You mentioned sort of the integration aspects, and we've sort of briefly mentioned on Leicester. I think it's crucial to point out that we haven't seen a situation like has happened in Leicester happen in Derby, but the situation's always evolving, and it's documents like this and the way of working that we can hopefully help to continue to prevent something like that happening. You mentioned neighbourhood crime, and quite rightly, that is something councillors are contacted about a heck of a lot. I had an email from the constabulary today about something I've taken up that's been happening sort of in and around my ward. I know that it'll be the same for all other councillors, so I think we're quite right to mention that. We mentioned, which very great, glad to see on here, the diversionary activities, and I've been really happy to see something we've done with graffiti walls up in the Cathedral Quarter area of the city that has covered something that we know people find to be an issue, and we know is an issue with graffiti, finding a more productive and targeted way to not only start to tackle the issue, but to improve an area and make it look a lot more vibrant as well. And of course, we mentioned tackling violence against women and girls. Of course, we've had great news around our previous awards for Safer Streets funding, which has been really good for the city. And I think the final bit to add, which I think we didn't cover, is just a reminder to any resident that may be watching this meeting of the importance of reporting crimes. don't sit and tolerate crime because it might be different somewhere else, or you might think it's not as important, or you might think it's not important at all because it doesn't compare to what may be happening in other areas. Always make sure that you are reporting criminal activity when it happens. That's what helps us build up the data. That's what helps us be aware of trends and patterns. And ultimately, that's what helps organisations like the Constabulary to be able to catch criminals and offenders. So always make sure you're reporting that. I think we're right to say this is a really, really strategic plan. It gives a great overview of what we're planning. And of course, Charlie, we've had discussions about this before. This has come before, just to run through some more specific points around it. So the recommendation before me at 2.1 is to approve the content of the strategy, commit Derby City Council support to its delivery, and agree that the Community Safety Partnership Safer Derby Board oversees the delivery through the Community Safety thematic board structures. Based on the discussion we've had today, I'm more than happy to approve that recommendation. So with that, that brings us to the end of the agenda. Thank you all for being here today, and I'll close the meeting.